Welcome to the Free and Reduced Eligibility Training. I'm Tamara Jackson. I'm the supervisor for the nutrition section of the Wyoming Department of Education. I am here today to give you an overview of the eligibility requirements that you will be handling in your schools, especially at the beginning of the school year. All participating school food authorities, which is you guys out in the districts of schools and the RCCIs that have day students, are provided the free and reduced price benefits, and you are required to send that out to the students and to the families. And all of this goes back to the wonderful regulations that we all deal with. I think there's always a question about how much judgment or discretion that you can use in determining whether a household does or does not meet the eligibility criteria. And this is a tough one to answer because every situation is so different. So I definitely would say that we would recommend that you refer to the eligibility manual that we have sent out, and that's also on download forms, and to look at that first of all. But if you cannot really determine what you want to do with this situation, please give us a call, either Camden or myself, and we will help you with the particular situation, because there are some unusual situations that come up that really might not be in the guidance. Each of you filled out a free and reduced price policy statement when you did your renewals, and that policy statement is a permanent document. If there are any changes that occur to any of the information in the policy statement, you need to contact us and you need to update that information. What we will do when the USDA changes the requirements for the policy statement, then we will send it back out to you to fill out again and to be submitted. At the beginning of, or near the beginning of school, you are required to send out a public release, and the public release is required to have the eligibility criteria for both the free and reduced price meals. And make sure that you don't just put the reduced on there, but you include both the free and reduced. It must be provided to local news media, unemployment office, or any major employees that you have who are contemplating a large layoff. Now, that one's kind of tough because how many large employers would really tell you about a layoff that's coming up? But if you know of one, that would really be good to give them that information. As far as releasing it to the news media, you're required to send it to them. That is what we want to see as documentation. You're really not required to be sure that it appears in the paper. You're just required to send it. If you have documentation of both of you sending it in the newspaper article, that would be great just to have as documentation. You also must explain your direct certification notification as part of that. Each year at the beginning of school, you are required to send out information, distribute to the households of the children that are attending your schools in your district or your private school, or the day students of if you're an RCCI. The letters cannot be sent out at the end of the previous school year. That would be a great thing if we could do that, but you have to wait until after July 1st in order to send the information out. And usually the USDA is kind of lags as far as getting this information to us. But as soon as we have the current school year information here at the state agency, we will get that information out to you. Just another thing, it must be distributed. It can be either sent through the mail, it can be emailed by the parents to the parents, or it can be included in an information packet to the parents. One good thing to remember with the income eligibility is if you have online applications, it's really important to remember that you are still required to provide a paper application if a parent needs that. So you can't just go totally to having an online system. That the USDA has not changed that requirement. And I know that many of you that have gone to having an online system are still very aware that you need to have that paper application as part of your process. If you are deciding as a district that you want to go to an electronic application, the requirement is that you notify me that you're interested in doing that. And then I have to approve the online application, and I also have to approve your system for managing it. It is required that you have one application per household. Applications must be complete to be approved. So that's a really important thing to remember, to make sure that the 4 digits of the Social Security number are listed, to make sure that the application is signed and is dated. And all of those things that I just mentioned are really things that sometimes people miss. So I would recommend, if it works for you, maybe to highlight those particular areas just so that you're aware of looking for them, and also that the family is aware that that's an area that needs to be filled out. There is a carryover period, and the carryover is 30 operational days. And that is from the first day of school, 30 operation days. That period of time, you can carry over what the determination, the eligibility determination was from the previous year. This gives parents and guardians an opportunity to get their new application filled out for the current year. Also, as everything, we require that you have that non-discrimination statement. As we talked about before, you're required to make sure that the applications are sent out to all of the households, and unless the household has been directly certified, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The school food authorities, which is the districts, the schools, and the RCCIs that have day students, you're required to use the USDA prototype application. So we will provide that to you, hopefully in June, is what of every year, but we get it to you as soon as we get it from the USDA. And we will send that prototype application to you, and that is the application that needs to be used. If you change that application in any way, you need to get approval from the WDE. If you put your school's letterhead on it, that's totally fine. We're not talking about that kind of change. We're just talking about if you really modify the prototype application. And the reason that we're doing that is just to make sure that you're in compliance with the program. It just makes it so much easier if you just use what we send you rather than trying to create your own. One thing that we have seen when we've been out there doing reviews is we have noticed that sometimes schools will use the same form year after year, and they'll just update it. And you really do not want to be doing that, because if you're updating something that was old, a lot of times the information that's on it won't be current. So you really need to use the information we send out for each year. The application components, you need to have the instructions that we send out with the application. Applicants without income need to write 0 or mark no income. If the form is blank where the income is and there's no income listed, that could be considered an incomplete application. So it really is important to just stress to people to either put a 0 or to have no income listed. If you get an application back that is blank, you can follow up with that household and ask them for more information in order to have that application be complete. If you get that information over the phone, you can make documentation of that right on the form, the date, the time of the phone call. If you get it through an email, I would just attach the email directly to the form. That will help just as far as documentation for us, and also it covers you guys to make sure that the forms are correct. Again, make sure that the Social Security number is on there, the last 4 digits, and also make sure that the date and the signature of the person signing the form is there. We have included a section after the application that is for your it's for the approving official, and so it's an area where the family will not be completing, but that is where you need to put your signature and your date of approval and the status. So when we come out to review those, we don't want to see that you determined somebody free, but you did not fill out that determining field. So you need to have the approving official, the date of approval, and whether it's free, reduced, or denied. You can find the current application for the 15-16 school year on Download Forms, which is under WDE 13. Many people have questions about foreign language, especially Spanish, and what they can use for that material. This year it took us a little while to get the correct forms because the prototype was changed from the USDA, but they are currently located on WDE on the download forms, WDE 36 and 37. One is a link that you can see here on this slide where you can find, I think it's up to about 36 different languages that the application is translated to. So that's a good thing to use. And then for the Spanish, we have that right there on Download Forms. The web-based application process, we discussed that earlier, just to reiterate that you need to make sure that you have paper applications that are still available and that we need to approve any new software that is used. The one thing to remember on your web-based application is that it cannot be more restrictive than what the paper application is. And a great example of that would be you can't require an address because an address is not required on the paper application, or a birth date. You can require those to get on to the school system where the application is located, but you can't require that directly on the application. Also, on the online system, if there is a field for a child being directly certified for migrant, runaway, foster, homeless, there needs to be a way in which the person that is in charge of the applications at the district has an ability to look at that. Because the migrant, runaway, and homeless is determined by that liaison within your district, and so it can't be just automatically directly certified. Foster needs to be checked against the direct cert side. Again, you cannot require one application for each student in a household, but you can make a copy of it. And we have seen many schools and districts that have an application, if there's 4 kids in the family, that they make copies, and so they have 4 of the same application, so they have one for each of the students. And I think it's just a double check for them to make sure that they aren't missing anybody. That's fine if you want to make copies, but you can't require a family to fill out one application for each child. The only time that this would work is if you have a resident of a residential child care institution. And in that case, for those day students, you would have one student attached to one application. And it's good for the RCCIs to remember that your eligibility documentation for the students that are not day students, that are residential, is your eligibility documentation sheet. And that also is located on download forms. I know we harp on this a lot, but it's very important to remember that you can't just provide the applications to the students that you think will qualify for free and reduced. You are required to provide those applications to everybody. But you're not required to provide the application to the households that are directly certified if you already know that information prior to the school starting.